Okay, we have a very natural continuing theme. Beate Hovind, she's original from Hovind gård. She's not from Oslo, originally. North from Oslo, and currently project director of the Bjørvika Utvikling, who commission art producer in public spaces. Anne is currently putting her experience in city planning of Oslo that produces ambitious, large-scale, impactful, collaborative work. Over the past 20 years, Anne has worked at the interface of art, culture, and business, and has a long experience working with stakeholders towards the shared vision of realizing complex and original projects. Sound very difficult. This includes developing public services, building hospitals, I know, city planning, amongst other many other projects. Anne Beate, you say that art has the capacity to change minds, emotionally connect people, build a bridge between groups and countries, and create hope and change. At first sight, I thought you were talking about yourself, because I also believe that you have the capacity to change our minds during the next 25 minutes. Welcome, Anne Beate.
Hello. 2 weeks ago, the queen of dystopia herself, and now rock star Margaret Atwood, turning 80 in November, nominated the 12 women who are shaping our future. And one of the 12 women is the Scottish artist Patterson and her work, The Future Library. And this artwork is actually unfolding and literally growing here in Oslo. And it has proven that art can have an impact, it can have the capacity to change minds and even the world, and it's changed my life. I will discuss this, but first I will give you some context, because I work in this neighborhood, Bjørvika, and I guess many of you have already visited that place. It is Norway's largest city development, and Bjørvika development transformed 650,000 square meters of a classical port, moving road and rail tracks to create a community and facilities and public space. And as you see, the opera is here, the Munch Museum is here, and the new public library, all in that image. I've taken it myself. And we're building new public spaces. 40% of the area is designated as common land. And I work for both Bjørvika Association and Bjørvika Utvikling. I have lots of hats, for the ones that don't know me. And who owns the property. And Bjørvika Utvikling is the infrastructure company and builds the infrastructure, including the commons and the public spaces. So my role is to commission and produce art in these commons. And my job has been to allow artists ideas to happen, to unfold and protect them, and so they can evolve. But when you work in this kind of context, what kind of art would you like to have? And we discussed that, and we have a tendency to choose art that we are familiar with. Sometimes, and that is something we can recognize as art. It's a sculpture. Something that is worth investment needs to be in bronze. And since we are in Norway, this tends to be a sculpture, moose sculpture in bronze. And there are many of them, but they're still moose. But in Bjørvika, we wanted something special and something unique, something the citizens we needed and that could have an impact on our urban lives, something that is relevant for our time. So our vision was to offer people the actually physical experience you get when you climb the opera roof mountain. You have to slow down, and there's nothing to buy, and this particular experience, this physical experience, is the only brief we gave to the artist. And today, Bjørvika is hosting 2 unconventional, ambitious works. They are durational, and both have already generated long-term outcomes something relevant for our time and future. And the reception of both of them has been astonishing, both nationally and internationally. So I have to say that art can influence both me and you and the entire generation and work as a catalyst for change. And it really has the ability to connect your senses, your body and mind, and make the world felt. I will explain why. First project, I will run through three projects. So Future Farmers is an art collective from California, Belgium, with the leading artist Amy Francischini. And they propose to develop a site-specific artwork which grows organically based on participation and involvement from neighbors and other citizens. And they just fell in love with this beautiful place, not. An urban harbor desert in the middle of the infrastructure and roads, and actually on top of a new tunnel. And it is regulated as one of the commons in this area. And through their research, they came across this picture from 1884. And a closer look showed us that this is actually a former farming land. It must be Oslo's first urban farming, I think. And this image works as a catalyst. We just said, we just got to do it. So we had this article in the newspaper, and we said, we will give away 105 tiny square meter allotment gardens on this specific site. And we weren't sure if anyone would resonate to it. And we were totally wrong. 4,000 people applied within 8 hours. And we did not know how to handle this. And very soon people came and shuffled their soil into the boxes. And just let me see here, yeah. And the lucky one showed up there, and I'm standing there in the middle. A younger is already 7 years ago. And it has been an amazing journey. But the artists wanted to do something else because they had done this urban farming in San Francisco several years ago. So they kept on researching. As you can see, they have a canoe, and they took it even on the bus, before electric buses, I think. They tried to, but they didn't manage, of course. And there's an oven, so through baking with bread, they started discussing with people, and they asked, what would you like to have? What's important for you? And then they proposed a bakehouse. And I said, no, it's not relevant. I don't think that's going to work in Oslo. And I was wrong, of course, because they asked, let us pilot this, let us prototype it, let us test it for 3 weeks. And I said, okay. And I was wrong, so it was extremely crowded. But of course, testing it gave me a very good argument, because I'll tell you, to tell my board to invest in this kind of project has been a struggle. It's not easy. But by testing it and counting people showing up and all the attention it got, they agreed on building this beautiful bakehouse on the site. And the Future Farmers and the citizens and animals has transformed this public space into a vibrant urban farm. It has organically grown to become a cultural institution without walls, focusing on our immaterial cultural heritage, such as farming and baking. And at the same level as, let me see, it's not switching, yeah. At the same level as the Munch Museum. It's a cultural institution. And I think this is so beautiful, it even makes, no, I'm not going to say that. The Munch Museum, beautiful. The grains are beautiful. I'm not going into that discussion, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. And everyone wants to take part of this. And for the non-Norwegians, yeah, this picture shows vice mayors and ministers, and they all want to be involved in this, and they are now sowing grains. And we have kindergarten, school dropouts, drop-ins. You can come anytime and work. Immigrants, young and old, hipster and others, and young men and women with dementia is working there. This really touches me, and you can just jog by, or because not everyone is playing football, you know? And I think that took some time for this city to acknowledge that we need different kind of opportunities, different kind of activities. And this now has become just an ordinary farm. And I think today we understand that it's both relevant for our urban lives, but it's also crucial. So this is a community dinner, I think that was shown earlier today. And last winter, because it has been temporary, it was not easy, and I had to promise it was temporary. But now everyone loves it. So now it's permanent. The Beate is permanent, and the farm is permanent. And the city of Oslo actually hired a full-time, fixed position farmer there. Applause, I think they should have for that. And that's because I think we need professionals, you know. Both farmers and bakers need professionals to teach people how to do this. So the city, the Losæter has been a driver for change in this city. And I think now we take it for granted, all this urban farming stuff, but it was not 8 years ago, I'll tell you. A Norwegian philosopher called Arne Johan Vetlesen wrote this book, The Denial of Nature. And this book has inspired me a lot. Life and death will be an urban affair for most of us on this globe, but we need to make sure that our children don't lose their experience with soil, trees, nature when growing up. I believe we need to make sure children stay connected with nature through actually physically experiencing it. If not, they will not connect emotionally. They will lose their empathy and take wrong decisions about the future. So we actually need to teach our kids how things are connected. Make sure they become soil literates. Next project, Blue Common. This is Elin Sørensen. She's a visual artist, a landscape architect, and a PhD fellow at the Norwegian University of Life Science. And she's actually exploring urban tidal landscape. Her focus is the interface between land and ocean, and through her work, she has made me understand how the Blue Common is completely invisible landscape and ecosystem for me on land. And many of the world's harbors are redeveloping into residential recreational areas, as here in Oslo, the fjord city. Proposals such as artificial islands, floating swimming facilities are welcome, but they're all based on our humans' interest and not the life below the surface. And at the same time, the marine ecosystems are in change and under threat, losing species and ecosystem functions. Elin works in close collaboration with scientists and marine biologists. She forces us to recognize a shift in this perspective. We need to ask ourselves how urban forestry development can account for enhanced life below water. How can we restore this disturbed seafloor and shoreland to a habitable state for marine life? And later today, I'm moderating this breakout session where we focus on this, and Elin, together with marine biologists and scientists, will address essential gaps, knowledge, perspective, and even language, and discuss how to fill them. And I work closely with Elin on several marine projects now. And yesterday, we know that 40 free divers have signed up to help us. And I've even done my first free diving course. I can recommend it, but you need to learn how to breathe, or else you panic. And we also develop a new language that makes sense, such as the ocean as the Blue Common. It's something we share. It is also ours. It's our responsibility, the Blue Common. So we need to build bridges between different disciplines, and this interface between professionals on land and professionals below surface will, I think, be the driver for change in how we will save our oceans. So you just get together and start working. I think the innovation within this field is going to increase enormously. Let's talk in 5 years about that. And since few of us ever will spend time in the big ocean, we need to bring our kids down to the shoreline, as with Losæter and the soil, and let them physically experience how everything below the surface is connected. We need to make them as ocean literates. The last work I will present has changed my perception of time, place, and borders. Katie Patterson gave us Future Library. Katie Patterson was welcome to propose whatever she wanted. She had an idea, but she called me and she wanted to make sure that it was applicable to Oslo. So she's asked, can I borrow a cabin? Could have been yours, I think, because it's in this neighborhood, Trysil. And since all Norwegian have cabins, that was the easiest part of this project. So I told her yes. And after a week, she had stayed there all by herself. And she came out very enthusiastic and said, I have the perfect idea for Bjørvika, the harbor development. And I was really, really curious. It's going to last for 100 years. No. And we're going to grow a forest with 1,000 trees. No, no, no. I could hear my board. No. Do a risk assessment. But today, a forest in Oslo is growing, and together with the artists, we have planted 1,000 baby spruce trees 6 years ago already. And the forest will grow for another 95 years, and in 100 years, the forest will become an anthology of books. And every year, we invite a new author, and the first one was the rock star, Margaret Atwood. Second was David Mitchell. Third was Sean. The fourth was Elif Shafak, and the one in the middle is Han Kang. She wrote The Vegetarian, and she was here this spring. And their texts will be printed on paper from the forest, which is growing now. And every year, and it will stay unpublished and unread until 2114. And the texts are kept in trust in a special designed room in the 5th floor of the new public library in Bjørvika, which will be open in 2020. It's so moving to be there. And the text will move into these boxes with and this, of course, is made out of the trees that we cut before we planted new ones. And the interest in this work and the outreach has been enormous. And the massive response or reception has been surprising and overwhelming. It's crossing borders, languages, religions, and generations. And I ask myself, why is it so? And I think it's because it's about basic human things that we need and are in need of now. It's a deep sense of purpose that speaks to fundamental human needs. Like we offer rituals. Every year the author comes to Oslo, that's part of the project, and we just walk to the forest together, silence. And there's a very, very simple ritual where the author hands over the manuscripts to Oslo and do a small reading, not from the manuscript, another text, and we listen to the forest. It's a very strong experience. Yesterday, I got the right message about the new author. I'm not going to tell you who it is. So the next handover in spring, next year, 23rd of May, you're all welcome. So rituals, but as Margaret Atwood said, it creates hope. It's an act of optimism, she said. That's why she wanted to be a part of the project. And I've been lucky to meet her many times. And usually I show a picture with me and her because I'm starstruck. But her husband died last night. I got the message this morning. So I chose a picture of them in the forest. Graham died. But also yesterday, she's been all over the world, the news, and in a new statement yesterday she said, by its existence, the project argues that there will be people in 100 years. There will be a Norway in 100 years. People will still be able to read. People will still be interested in reading. There is a great bundle of hope right there, she said. And Margaret's response is clear and compelling. She said that it's a fact the planet is changing. And she said we need both creativity, ambition, and some powerful new stories about how the world is changing and how we can change with it. Because if we can vision a future through stories, we can change it. I'm showing you this because I did a research on constructive journalism, and The Guardian found that young people tend to just drop reading the newspaper. So they made a shift, and they decided to publish both good news and bad news, both of them, so it will level it out, the bad news. And they found that if they put good news together with the bad news, the young people came back. And they tend to share the good news more often than the bad news. But look what the editor says. When she says the young people especially yearn to feel a hope the previous generation once had, I feel very, very responsible to do something. I'm often asked by journalists, how can you believe that anyone would finish this project? You're dead by the time. And my only reply is, it's all about trust. I get very touched every time I say that. I need to trust the coming generations, that they actually will do this. But the thing is, they need to trust us, that we actually care doing this kind of project, so there is something for them to take over. And time is my last point, and time matters. BBC Future had recently an article about deep time, deep civilization, and timefulness. And yesterday, the blue here behind the scene, they announced their coming documentary on this work, and it says, The Matter of Time. It's out next week. And people behind a long time project has written an article for the BBC where they champion art and culture, asking in the headline how art and culture can help us rethink time. Presenting several artworks, including, of course, the Future Library. That's why I find all these articles. I Google every morning, and there's always something interesting. And they say that art can stretch out our perspectives, expand our time frames, and help us relocate our existence in a much more epic territory. Our modern lives have pulled into an era of short-termism and individualism, and Future Library has been described as a result of cathedral thinking. And it was Stephen Hawking who introduced me to this term several years ago. And he claimed we are entering an era of cathedral thinking. The big issues facing humanity, such as climate change, overpopulation, energy and resource shortage, require us to think in terms of solutions that will span generations. He said the most meaningful thing we can hand down to the next generation is no longer a watch or a family estate, but a grand challenge, a life's work, or a multi-generational task. So we need more cathedral projects like Future Library, started by one generation, with a hope a future generation will take up the challenge, trusting those who follow us to see it through to completion. Projects that reach beyond normal human timescale to deliver environmental wealth for the future. Another strong driver for change, I have to mention her now, because she has a very good point, and now she speaks about cathedral thinking too. But she says, and I totally agree, it's urgent, but we need to think long term. We need to combine the two. So my conclusion is that these artworks are drivers for transformation. They show us that art can influence an individual or even an entire generation and work as a catalyst for change. Art's assets is that it has the ability to connect you emotionally, your senses, your body and mind, and make the world felt. So my message is that soil literacy and ocean literacy will make us future literates. I want to finalize this by being a little bit more personal. I felt like I almost cried several times, but so you can tell I'm quite connected to this. I'll get worse now. because another BBC article, you have to follow this BBC Future, because it's really interesting. It really are putting very important issue to the agenda. Well, one of these articles brought up a female American sociologist, Elisa Bolding. She was actually Norwegian born, and she died in 1978. But she described what she called a temporal exhaustion. If one is mentally out of breath all the time, dealing with the present, there's no energy left for imagining the future, she said. And she offered a model of thinking. She said we have to expand our idea of the presence. Presence is not here and now, she said. Okay, I come from this farm, Hovind, from the hill Hovind, and my name is Hovind. And I was the oldest child, and my father died 46 years old, and I had to make a decision to become a farmer or not. I decided not to, and I haven't regretted. But through this work, I've been so confronted, also with the unarticulated language and knowledge I carry that I thought was useless, but I think is crucial. This letter is from my great-grandfather to his son Ivar, I didn't know existed, and I found them by serendipity 3 years ago. It's written in 1913. This is 100 years back. These 4 girls are my grandchildren. So she said, this is a very personal, experienceable, generation-based period of time. It reaches from grandparents to grandchildren, people to whom we feel responsible. This is presence. It's 200 years. So this perspective will change our way of thinking and acting. Thank you.
I was right. You are able to move us.
Myself?
Yes, yourself, and that's maybe why I was nearly crying myself. One question for you as well. That I know that you received the Oslo Municipality prize for your work, art prize for your work. How did that make you feel?
I was just so lucky, time-wise, good timing, to be in the right place, to be able to work with these artists. So I'm just very grateful. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Somebody says it's art to make art happen too, not only the idea. We have been great teams all the way. So I'm just very grateful I was there at the right time.
You are a very lucky woman.
Yes, I am.
Kan du stå på scenen her?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult to tie up this session, but we are ending it in a few minutes. But I will ask Frode, Ola, Helena to enter the scene again and welcome Marit from NLA and also Reiner, who's the president and the manager of Norwegian Landscape Architects Foundation. No.
Hello. Yeah, well, it is about the book. Yeah. You will have a present. But we are very proud of this book because it's Norwegian contemporary landscape architecture, and it's a brand new book, and it's extremely of big variation our profession, from the small to the big, and this is the book from the last 10 years of Norwegian landscape architecture, and I think it's a big interest for you, of course, but for everybody. So. We have 2,000 of these, and to be honest, it's good to have a good sale for NLA. And the editor, Ingrid Falle, she will be signing it outside afterwards. It cost 400 crowns, 40 euros. I only say something about it very fast.
First of all, we're going to say a big thank you.
Yes, I forgot. I forgot you. Also occupied on this book. I'm sorry. I'm blushing in public. Excuse me. Very fast. It's about places to grow up on. It's about transformations. It's about the small things Ola mentioned. But Frode also, your theme is here. And absolutely places to grow up on. And it's about public health and design. And on the end, the green shift. Thank you.
Okay. I know there is a 30-minute coffee break, and then it's further on to the breakout sessions. And you will meet Ola, Anne Beate, and Helena in breakout sessions. So enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy Oslo. You have fantastic weather. Be out. I hope you will. And have a nice time.